Hey there, and welcome back to Approved AF, the licensing podcast. Stories and strategies for mortgage professionals who got licensed and leveled up. I'm Catalina Stepanoff, and I work behind the scenes at licensingstore.com, where we help mortgage companies just like yours get licensed, stay compliant, and scale without the chaos. On today's episode, I'm joined by Erika Reinhofer, the SVP of Business Intelligence and Analytics at licensingstore.com. She turns complex mortgage data into filed reports, helping companies stay compliant, file on time, and avoid costly mistakes. From mortgage call reports to state filings, Erika knows the numbers that drive compliance. Today, we shine a spotlight on reporting, avoiding mistakes, missed deadlines, and licensing meltdowns. So let's jump in. Erika, kick us off. How did you come to be a part of Licensing Store?
Well, I've been with Licensing Store for almost 3 years now. I was with another mortgage licensing company for 2 years before that, so I've been in this industry for almost 5 years now. I am more on the post-license compliance side. So keeping up with your licenses, once you do get your license approved, you come to me and our portion of this company. And what we do is help maintain your licenses that are already approved by making sure that your reports are submitted on time, any pipeline reports, mortgage related reports that need to be submitted with, your mortgage numbers, things like that. We also monitor your Secretary of State registrations if need be to keep those compliant and active to make sure that your company is allowed to still do business in all of the states that you're conducting business in. And then outside of that, we kind of just maintain, bonds, things like that, that go along with having a license that you don't really think about outside of, great, I can sell houses in this state now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, what do mortgage brokers not realize about reporting requirements that come after they get licensed?
Well, the most annoying thing that I think clients come across is that not every state is the same. As we know with licensure, the same thing goes for reporting. So the states have the opportunity to impose whatever reporting requirements they want. Different states have monthly requirements. Some states have quarterly requirements, while a handful of states have annual requirements. So it really just depends on what state that you're going into, as well as your business activities. For example, brokers might not have a supplemental report, but if you're servicing or lending, you may have to complete that additional compliance aspect in order to remain in good standing.
I am so glad you track all of that and not me.
It's a lot.
It does. Again, maybe if you're licensed in one or two states, it's kind of reasonable. But again, depending on where you're licensed at or carrying a bunch of licenses, that can add up real quick.
Yes, and things definitely fall through the cracks while, brokers and lenders and things like that are boots on the ground trying to get those deals, especially in this economy, in this market right now. They're just trying to meet as many people and get as many things across the finish line as they can. So a lot of times these reports and like the admin aspect of your licenses gets kind of thrown to the wayside.
What is like, can you give an example of a time where someone came to us having missed a report and things just kind of were sideways for them because, like you said, they're focused on closing these deals, not the reports, and maybe they missed something?
Yes. The biggest one that's always missed is the North Carolina quarterly report, for example. Those ones, a lot of people don't realize that on top of the mortgage call report that is quarterly, there's also another quarterly report that has to be submitted to the North Carolina Commissioner of Banking on top of that extra report. So a lot of times, North Carolina doesn't really, notice that these things have been missed until it's 2 years down the line, and now your license is at risk of being revoked. Another one that we run into a lot is the California financing law license, I believe. The CFL is another big annual report that a lot of people forget about. And the DFPI does not mess around. They have a $100 per day late fee the first 10 days, and then $500 the next 10 days. And then after that, it's up to $25,000. And then your license also gets revoked. So we've had
Okay, so you
clients.
missed a report and you are looking at some serious fines.
Yes, and it
And
depends on the report. So again,
hmm,
the downfall of, not completing these compliance aspects, it differs. So some states, they do give you the leniency of, filing the reports, and you can promise that you're going to file them on time, from here on out, but they're angry about the ones that you forgot. But states like California, it's one and done. So we really just try to stay on top of our clients to make sure that they're aware of these reports. But a lot of times, even if they are aware, the deadline comes and goes and it's just forgotten about.
okay, interesting. Um, with companies that kind of forget about these reports, like you were saying, like the North Carolina quarterly report, is there one that is something that they should definitely have on their radar that if they forget it, there's like a costly adverse effect for missing it just one time? Is there a specific state or something like that that kind of comes across?
Immediately, it's California, whether you have the CFL DFPI license or you have the CRMLA license. Both of them have two different reports due, but California specifically does not mess around, like I said, with their reporting. To my knowledge, most other states are pretty lenient about it, or they'll, give you a one-time pass kind of thing. The biggest things that are going to start adding up the late fees would be the Secretary of State renewals that people usually forget about. So once we register in a state to get our business name,
Like a formation
yeah.
of
But
a
once we
foreign entity filing.
and then once you get the name reserved and everything, then you're allowed to do business in that state. But if you don't renew it every year, which you do, in all the states, they have an annual renewal. If you don't renew it, a lot of times they just keep adding on, okay, this renewal was $150, but now it's $500 because it's late. And then if you forget the following year as well, great, they're just going to tack it on. So by the time you realize that you are, 5 years or whatever behind your reports, you now owe $3,000 to file all of these backdated reports, essentially.
Oh, wow. That can very easily like add up and make it no longer advantageous for you to be in business.
Yes. And when you go out of good standing in a state with the Secretary of State Department, say, for example, you have the CFL license, but your California Secretary of State registration has lapsed, the DFPI actually can go in and revoke your license because you are not technically allowed to be doing in that business in that state. And what can actually happen is all loans in your pipeline in that state will have to be put on hold until your company is allowed to conduct business in that state again.
That's okay. So for those just kind of listening in and maybe not fully aware of the full scope of the licensing and reporting process, you get your company licensed. And in order to get licensed as a company, you need to register with the Secretary of State and get a foreign entity filing if you're not from that state in order to do business in that state.
Correct. So if
And then maintain that.
yes. So any state that you plan to go into and do business in, before you even look at the license, you have to apply to conduct business in the state. It is one of the license items on the checklist. So your license actually won't be approved most of the time unless they miss it. But your license won't be approved until you're registered in that state. They do double check to make sure that you have the certificate of authority to conduct business, and then they'll move on. But like you said, that authority to conduct business is only in that given year. You do have to renew it. Some states have tax reports that you have to complete. Some states it's just a easy peasy online verifying that your address didn't change, the members managers didn't change, the corporate breakdown, all of that fun stuff. And then you pay the renewal fee and you're good to go. Those renewal fees aren't always low. They range from, $5 to $300, but again, it's the state's choice, and the late fees are going to be piled on top of that. So it's never going to get any cheaper.
So we should really pay attention to those Secretary of State notifications that come in the mail or in an email, not just write them off.
Yeah. And we should definitely maintain a good working relationship with our registered agents just to make sure that we're on the same page about what's going on, what states are we in, where am I being represented, and also what am I paying for?
That's a good point. That is a really good point. It's wild to see how many brokers are amazing at closing and managing their pipelines, but the license reporting piece just really trips them up.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
Just the admin stuff on the back end that nobody really wants to sit down and do.
they don't got time for it. They're too busy.
It's
Um,
assuming.
so what makes reporting so difficult for these companies, especially as they go from like one state to multiple states?
Organization. Um, in the LOS, that is essentially your loan origination system is your Bible. That is the end all be all. Whatever happens to a loan file needs to be updated in there. Otherwise, there's no way to really track what happened. So when you have an actual applicant and they come in and they have all 6 pieces of TRID, they have an address, they have a loan amount, they're good to go, they're ready to go. That's an actual application. They get their credit report and everything. When they get to the end of the application, that's what we're actually looking for is what happened to it. Great, this person applied for this address for this much money, but we need to know what happened to it because that's essentially what's on all of these reports. So all of these reports are just taking basically a picture, a snapshot of your pipeline for the quarter. So how many applications came in, how many were funded, and out of the ones that were funded, what happened to them? Were they denied? Were they withdrawn? Were they closed for incompleteness because the borrower disappeared? Things like that, that just because the loan, was basically dead in the water in your paperwork, you still have to update the back end stuff because that's, again, the Bible that we're working off of in order to complete the reports. So to answer your question, for the biggest thing that we run into is a lot of brokers and lenders, as they get bigger and hire more loan officers, they're having issues with the loan officers going back and updating the LOS, which again, we try to, take away most of the admin part. But at the end of the day, we don't know what happens to those loans. They do. So they have to update the system. As long as the system is updated and accurate, I can go in, nitpick whatever fields are missing, if they, skipped one, anything like that. But the biggest thing is making sure that the applications are actually being decisioned within the LOS.
That's a really good point. So clean data is better for reports internally and externally.
Correct. Yeah. And it's always better to get it cleaned up and get a good system going, a loan processor, maybe, things like that, just somebody to kind of keep their eyes on things as they're passing back and forth. But yeah, it's just the back end LOS is the biggest resource that any of these brokers could have.
That's a very good point. I'm a nitpicker for tracking and data on our end of things, but yeah, you forget that when you start hiring more people, there are more hands in the pot and just making sure that they are doing their job so
Right.
you can do yours. Yeah.
Right.
Good
And we
point.
understand that some things do, you forget that, oh, that loan funded a couple months ago. I'm just going to go back and plug that in. Those things happen. That's totally fine. As long as it's not just the bulk of loans that are just sitting there basically in process, like, oh, you had 300 loan applications and nothing happened to any of them. That's the kind of thing that we have to go through.
So what happens if I did that and I went back a couple months and I adjusted the filings? Is there like a trickle down effect to my MCRs and other reports that I then have to go and fix as well, or it just kind of autocorrects?
Yes and no. So that loan that we're speaking of that you kind of go back and fund, last quarter or whatever, when you send me the data for the next quarter, I'm going to notice that that loan is missing because it was technically still in process what last time I heard from you, but then now it's not on the data. So that's when I kind of shoot you an email and say, hey, this John Smith had this loan number. What happened to it? So then, we touch base. You say, hey, it funded it back in March. And I say, great. I go back and I amend that previous quarter to make sure that that loan gets moved from in process to funded. And then that way everything still balances, because even if it's just one loan off, it won't balance. It has to be the amount of loans that came in has to be the same amount of loans that got decisioned.
Okay. And so for people listening, what would you say are like warning signs that they are getting close to falling behind or that they have fallen behind and they're missing something?
Definitely any MCR deficiencies, the NMLS is very good about making sure that like from one quarter to the next, if you didn't carry over that exact figure, it will post a deficiency for you. Um, the only other thing that I can think of is a lot of times people send me data where loans are either in process or funded, and that's it, because they don't want to put that there were any adverse effects or anything like that. But unfortunately, those do raise red flags for regulators. You know, you may get away with it for a few quarters, but eventually somebody's going to raise a red flag. So unfortunately, the NMLS has some, completeness checks and things just to make sure that the report's balanced, but you won't really know that red flags are being raised until the regulators come to you and say, hey, this kind of looks off.
Okay. And so you mentioned that if they're coming to you, you have eyes on it and you're tracking quarter to quarter. That's part of our MLMP program with Licensing Store.
Yes.
What other reporting tasks do you and your team take off of a broker or any mortgage professional's plate once they become enrolled into MLMP?
So with MLMP, we handle all of your registered agent and Secretary of State renewals. So you don't have to worry about, like I said before, that relationship with your registered agent. We kind of serve as the liaison to make sure that they're aware of any address changes, officer changes, business activities, things like that. We serve as that go-between so that your relationship with us is the main contact, and then we spread from there. So registered agent contacts, make sure that your renewal's done, you're still represented in all of your states, all of that stuff. Secretary of State, like I said, we monitor all of the Secretary of State registrations for our MLMP clients. So any state that, you maybe think you might go into Florida next year, but you're not sure. So you just want to keep your registration because it's cheaper to just renew it than it is to withdraw and requalify. Um, all of those we keep an eye on and we maintain. We go ahead and file them as well. We keep a credit card on file. So, we shoot you an email with, hey, these are the next renewals coming due in the next 90 days. Here's how much it's going to cost. Once we get fee approval, we'll go ahead and file those reports for you so that you don't have to worry about your registration lapsing, so that you're still able to conduct business in all of those states. I mentioned it before, but we also monitor some of the surety bonds and stuff that are required from these states. So a lot of times the surety bond amount is actually based on your loan amount. So as you grow as a company, you're going to need more surety bond coverage. But a lot of times you don't notice that because, you just send me your data and go along your very little way. So 9 times out of 10, we will check and make sure that, bond amounts are still good to go. That 1 time out of 10 is the one that the regulator beats us to it and posts the deficiency. So in any of those situations, again, we go ahead, we have a contact with a bond provider. So there's nothing needed from the client side on that. We just let them know, hey, we need an increased rider issue. They issue the rider. We let the client know it's ready to go and they can go ahead and sign off on that. So surety bonds are another thing that we maintain, as well as any additional state reports. So we mentioned the North Carolina report. We also do the California reports, the South Carolina reports, the Nevada reports, anything like that. There's a few random servicer ones that come through, like I said. So all of those compliance reports and just basically anything involved with maintaining your license. So all of the NMLS deficiencies, if they're looking for extra fingerprints or they're looking for new business activity breakdown, we also assist with that, kind of getting the document printed up, signed by you, get it on company head, and then we're good to go.
Wow. So are there any states, I mean, you're listing off like East to West Coast and states with extra reports. Are there any states that are just like, hey, once you're licensed, you're good to go. No additional reports needed.
There's actually a few. Like I said, it does depend on your business activities, but states like Florida don't have an additional report. Texas only has their tax report. There are quite a few states that don't require additional reporting.
Just Secretary of State maintenance.
Correct. But they still do rely on those mortgage call reports. So that's why the states that are requesting these supplemental reports are looking for way more information than the MCR is giving. So mortgage call reports really just care about, like I said, how many loans did you have, what happened to them, and then of the funded ones, were they conventional, FHA, first lien, second lien, just little things like that. The North Carolina report wants everything from, the DTI to the borrower income. So they want way more information that's on in the actual loan file than it is on the mortgage call report. So states like I said, Florida, Georgia, um, Colorado, places like states like that, they only need what is on the mortgage call reports. They don't require any of the additional data. If they're requesting an additional report, it's because they want more data than what the MCR is giving.
Awesome. What is a good benefit of having someone like you handle these things proactively versus reactively?
Well, the biggest thing is that when you're in MLNP, I track your loans from start to finish. So when you send me the loan data every quarter, I am seeing the individual loan applications. And like I said, I'm able to pull out when there is a discrepancy. I can kind of go in and say, okay, we had 8 loans that were in process at the end of last quarter, but now we only have 6 in process at the beginning. So what happened to those 2? I can track down those specific 2. But if I don't have your data from last quarter, if I haven't been tracking that loan, I don't know what loan is missing. I'm just going to tell you, hey, this doesn't balance.
So it's more hands-on.
Correct. Yeah. And it's more like monitoring from quarter to quarter
Yeah.
rather than here's the data that I have, plug it in.
It feels more personalized.
Yes, and it's more analyzed when we get it from quarter to quarter because we can look into, these different loan files. If we have loans from 2022 still, they probably need a new credit report ran. So I'll just kick it back to you and let you know, like, hey, these ones need to be marked as, file closed for incompleteness so that they're not continually on the report. Things like that.
Because those auditors do not like dirty data.
No, and the auditors have been getting more and more nitpicky about going into the loan origination systems and making sure that all of the loan file is actually in order. So my biggest thing, everybody always asks, what do I need to keep after, a loan closes? And I always say just everything. If it's on the LOS, plug it in. If you have the paperwork, great. Most of the time the lenders do, if you use UWM or Rocket, when you put it into their interface, they keep the loan files in some sort of database somewhere. So it is available to you through your lenders most of the time. But like I said, it's always better just to keep things just in case, because it's always better to just throw everything at the regulator and be like, here, I don't know what you need, rather than scrambling last minute for they're asking for this and I don't know how to get it.
That's a good point. Can you share an example of a client who was nervous at first about getting started with reports as part of their monthly licensing management program, and just how you kind of overcame that?
Yeah.
And they're like so happy that they like signed up.
We have actually quite a few of those just because at the beginning of the year, there was a push for a lot of broker or loan officers to actually open their own brokerages, with the climate that it was in and it is in. A lot of people are leaving the brokerages that they work for because they're realizing that they can make more money as their own brokerage. So when these people come to us, we help form their companies and things like that. But when it comes to the reporting part, they're really scared because they had the higher ups before that were doing it for them, at the last company, but now they don't even know what the NMLS is. They didn't know they needed a mortgage call report, things like that. So it's always very daunting when you first start, looking at the report, especially. It's very ugly. But I think once people realize that it's most of the information that the NMLS gives you and most of the information that they're asking for, only a small subsection actually applies to your company. All of the rest of it is mortgage servicing rights, things like that 9 times out of 10 does not actually apply to your company. So that's the biggest thing is don't stress. It's okay. Most of it's going to be zero anyway. The other thing is that the NMLS does allow us to do amendments up to 2 years. I think it's actually 2.5, but I'm going to say 2 years just to be safe. So we can go back if you do, forget, oh, I forgot that I had this loan come in and I just found the paperwork on my desk. No worries. We can just go in and plug it back in. That is the biggest thing about the NMLS and the MCRs. They allow us to amend the mortgage call reports because they want them to be as accurate as possible. So if they come or if something does happen, like I said, that the client that came and started her own brokerage and she was just kind of like, I don't know what to do for compliance. I'm scared. I don't want to get in trouble. No worries. they let you amend it. If the regulator comes to you and says, hey, according to your LOS, you should have 4 loans and this says you only have 2. Okay, sorry, I'll get that amended today. And then once it's amended, they're good to go. So the biggest thing is mistakes do happen. The regulators know, they just want the MCRs to be accurate. So while obviously we try to get them as accurate as possible on the first time around, do not fret. We can always go back and change it. It's easy peasy.
Good, good. That actually probably gives a lot of people some comfort there, knowing that it's not set in stone. No one's holding your feet to the fire. I mean, if you're being fraudulent, you're being fraudulent. You probably should get out of this business. But if you're like just a genuine person who made a mistake, you can go in and correct it. Good. Okay. What kinds of business owner benefits the most from having their reports handled versus doing it themselves?
What kind of business you said?
Like what would it be, like a broker, a solo shop, a company that's licensed in 50 states? What kind of company benefits the most from your reporting services versus them doing it in-house?
I think off the bat, I want to say obviously the bigger people, because there's more pieces involved in the puzzle, more plates that you're balancing. You really just want to make sure, if you're in all 50 states, you definitely don't want to track all your Secretary of State renewals while you're tracking your LOs, while you're tracking your LOS, while you're tracking your MCRs. But that being said, even though that's very obvious, I think that we're also really, we are the biggest asset for single brokerages and smaller companies, solely because, like I said, with all of these people kind of coming in, starting their own company from the bottom and really just trying to start something, they don't have time for this. They don't want to deal with the compliance part of it. They don't want to deal with the paperwork part of it, especially if you're a one-man shop. If your one man is sitting at his desk for 3 days working on the call report, that's 3 days that you missed out on going out and selling, getting loans. So a lot of these people prefer to be boots on the ground. I just want to work and have somebody else take care of the back end stuff for you. And that's what we do.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that you're right. It's not that they can't do it. Is that a benefit to their time. You only have so many hours in the day. You can do everything. It's just you're not going to have the time and space to do it all and do it all right. So outsourcing some of it to somebody who is an expert in it,
right,
can be beneficial for
Absolutely.
your overall growth and sustainability.
Well, and especially just having a second set of eyes on things that are noticing, like I said, hey, you have 30 loans from 2022 just sitting in your pipeline that you need to do something with, things like that you don't really realize, or, hey, you guys are not putting in, the fees correctly. And so it's just showing that your gross revenue is 0. Things like that you don't really realize because you're just going through the motions. You see it every day. It's the norm, whatever. When you come to us, we're going to kind of notice those things and say, hey, we need to start doing it this way.
Have you come across a client that was like on the verge of burning out because of all of the things that they had to track, and that by alleviating that reporting process for them, kind of streamlining it for them, they're now in a better spot than they were?
Yes, absolutely. There are quite a few of our clients that got really big really fast, and they were not expecting to grow in the time that they did grow. So they weren't ready for, going from 3 states to 25 all of a sudden, and then from, 3 LOs to 40 all of a sudden. So that was an instance where they weren't monitoring, what their LOs were doing. They were just go out into the world and work. So when they were doing that, like I said, the LOs weren't going into the loan origination system and actually updating the data with the correct funded dates or the withdrawn dates, or updating things, because they were just pushing things to UWM rather than actually updating it. And so we couldn't figure out why his MCRs were so inaccurate for a very long time. So we did have to have quite a few meetings just to kind of sit down and go through his data. But that is an instance of when you're growing without those mechanisms in place. Like I said, if you don't clean it up beforehand and you just keep going down the road, when you do get bigger, and nobody ever thinks like, oh, I'll get bigger later, all of a sudden the market's booming, or all of a sudden you got 10 new LOs this week, so things happen, but we can't forget to still be remaining organized and things like that. So a lot of times people just come to us and don't know what's going on. don't know the last time their LOS was updated. And so we kind of have to go in and work with them on what's going on with the loan files and what's going on with your guys' actual process within your office.
Got it. So you're basically like kind of an accountant, but for their LOS system.
Yeah, just like a cleanup crew, making sure that everything's getting marked and stuff. Because sometimes it's just a simple like one checkbox that they didn't check in the corner and it messed up everything. So you always got to be
Something so small can change everything.
technology.
Oh, how does it feel to be that person who helps clean it all up?
Oh, it feels so good. It's like I imagine a cleaning crew feels after coming into a very dirty house and then they leave and it's sparkly clean. When I leave and that data is just good, like I clean up all the data before I plug it into the MCR, make sure all the data's, straight, all the fields are filled in, we're good to go. Yeah, when I get that data from, the messy whatever that they send me and then I kind of scrub it and put it into my own format and get it all straightened out and situated and we actually have an MCR that's submittable. Yeah, it's an amazing feeling.
My kid calls it satisfying. Oh,
It
that's
is.
satisfying.
It is. Especially like a 50 stater and you finally get that last state into completeness checks. You're like, yeah.
Find that missing puzzle piece, plug it
Yeah.
in,
Yes.
picture's complete.
Yeah, that's essentially the financial condition, honestly.
Oh, yeah, the annual financial condition statement. Tell us about that guy.
So the annual well, it's just a financial statement. And a financial condition. So the financial condition is the report, and the financial statement is your actual statement that gets uploaded into the NMLS with your balance sheet, income statement, and statement of cash flow. So the financial condition report is literally exactly as it says. It is a statement of your company's financial condition at that time. So they essentially are just asking for you to take your accounts and put them into their subcategories within the NMLS. This gets a little bit dicey just because a lot of theirs don't coincide with, our accounting buckets and things like that. So not everything translates over. And sometimes, things don't balance. If the net income doesn't match from the balance sheet to the income statement, then it'll give us an error, things like that. So we utilize the company's financials to complete the financial condition. You mentioned that it is annual. It is annual for brokers. So if you are only brokering, you only have to do the financial condition once a year. And it is going to be 90 days after your fiscal year end. So most people's fiscal year end is 12/31, which is just the end of the year. So you have until 3/30 to submit it. Now, if you chose a random date for the end of the year, you just have 90 days from there. So brokers only have it at the end of the year. You just need your one financial statement and you're good to go. The lenders and servicers have to submit it every quarter now. So along with the rollout of the new MCR this year, they are requiring lenders and servicers to complete the financial condition on a quarterly basis. So now when we do complete that mortgage call report, there is a financial condition aspect to it. They are not two separate reports though. The financial condition has to be submitted in order for us to submit the mortgage call report. So it's just another aspect. So you have the financial condition, all of your state data, and then you can submit it.
Got it. If you got to talk to a broker who's just kind of getting started, what would you wish that they would do to keep themselves, like one tip for keeping themselves organized for reports?
I think utilizing just having some sort of system. So whether that's a loan origination system or I have clients that keep a running Excel sheet of their loans, which I'm surprised it works, but it works for them. So find a system that works for you and stick to it. Because like I said, organization is the biggest thing that we see fall through the cracks that makes a company crumble. You can keep working all you want, but at the end of the day, if you aren't organized and you don't have all that back end stuff, it's going to start to fall apart. So having a loan origination system, one, and then two, if you don't have an accountant or, somebody on staff that can help you with your financials, then utilizing QuickBooks or things like that. I know that there's some free versions of QuickBooks out there. I don't them, but just things like that where you can still track your financials and stuff, because please know that as a business owner, you are still responsible for having financials. Like you're in the big world now. So you have to have a balance sheet. You have to keep track of your expenses. You have to put it on an income statement, things like that. So they they do have systems out there. If you need blank examples of these forms, we do have them. So feel free to reach out and we'll send you some. But there are just accounting, back end tracking things that can help just to keep track of, like I said, everybody's going to have to submit something financial related and everybody's going to have to submit something pipeline related to your mortgage applications that are coming in. So just keeping track of back end books and your loans, that will keep you on the straight and narrow.
Well, I think you've done a great job scaring the pants off of anybody who wants to just keep this in-house. But if they wanted to reach out to you to get reporting assistance or talk more about MLMP, where can they reach you?
You can give me an email. My email is Erika with a K, Erika @Licensing Store, or you feel free to give me a call. I'm always here. I'm happy to answer your questions, mortgage call related, reporting related, whatever it may be. Give me a call, 248-663-3094.
Awesome. And just so everybody notes, she is on the West Coast, so do not call her early because she's not a morning person.
I am in California, so please don't go
California time.
early.
Thank you, Erika. It was a pleasure talking with you. And thank you for giving us some insight into the reporting world.
Absolutely. Good luck up there.
Thanks. Bye. All right, that's going to wrap up today's episode. Hope you enjoyed listening to Erika give us some insight into the reporting world. If you liked what you heard, hit subscribe so you don't miss another upcoming episode. Need help staying compliant with those reports? Head on over to licensingstore.com and share this with somebody who might find it helpful. Follow along because every episode will get you one step closer to being approved AF.